Just FYI, for everyone who's giving me money on Patreon, there's going to be a very important announcement at the end of this video, so stick around. Since people seem to enjoy my review of Crimes of Grindelwald, I thought I'd share something with you that I've enjoyed tremendously these past few weeks. Don't worry, this one will be spoiler-free, because I do want you to go watch it. 1983 is an amazing series that came out on Netflix in late November. It is not in fact some sort of prequel to George Orwell's 1984, though even from the trailer that you can see for it, it's a bit difficult to tell on account of it's also a dystopian story. They could have changed the timeline a little bit, maybe then call the show 1986 and have it be set in 2006, and then nobody would be confused anymore. The technology's a bit advanced for 2003 anyway, but it is an alternate universe story and they do deal with it appropriately. So yeah, if the title is confusing is basically the only criticism I can level at this thing, you know it's gonna be damned good. 1983 is one of those new international Netflix shows like Casa del Papel, which personally I couldn't get into for some reason. But those shows do tend to be kind of good and very refreshing. 1983 is a Polish production that follows an alternate history timeline where, after a series of terror attacks in the year 1983, communism is still alive and well in Poland in the year 2003. Also, the Soviet Union still exists, and Poland is not a part of it. And Al Gore is the President of the United States. One of the greatest criticisms that people level against this show is the thing that I consider to be its greatest strength. I see a lot of people complaining about the fact that the plot is too complicated and there's a lot of characters that are just way too fleshed out. Which is absurd to me, but also something where I can understand where it's coming from. You see, the problem with adapting novels into films has always been runtime. Novels can get away with having a lot of characters and fairly complex plots. They can have slow expository scenes that make the world feel more alive and give us insights into characters that aren't necessarily essential to the plot, but just interesting to have. Every minute of a feature film is not only expensive to produce, but you're also expected to be able to get through a feature film in one sitting. Whereas a book, you can just put away at any moment. This is why a lot of film adaptations of novels just break things down and oversimplify them to an extent that they are barely recognizable as their original work. Plots get distilled, subplots get left out, scenes are cut, characters get compounded or do not appear at all. And there have been a number of books over the years that are considered to be unfilmable. Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, for instance, while one of the greatest works of science fiction of all time, is way too complex for a series of 2-hour feature films. World War Z, a fantastic book, was considered to be unfilmable, and then they made a film out of it, and it went accordingly. And famously, the A Song of Ice and Fire saga by George R.R. Martin is impossible to adapt into film. I mean, just imagine how much nuance they would have sucked out of each of these books if they had turned them into a feature film each. They would have sucked. Martin actually said no to a lot of Hollywood offers because they didn't capture the complexity and nuance of the universe and the story. But A Song of Ice and Fire wasn't adapted into films, wasn't it? With the advent of online streaming services and a huge reduction in the costs of production value, high-end series have actually become feasible, and thus the runtime to actually put in a full, good, highly complex novel is provided. I actually prefer shows over films now, because they can have plots and characters that are a lot more complex because they have a runtime of round about 10 hours. That's what all these high-end shows, they always have 1-hour episodes and then 10 episodes of those. That's how long that takes. However, each individual sitting is only like an hour or 45 minutes long, meaning that I can more easily schedule it into my very busy day. And they are, by the way, making the Mars books into a series also. Now, 1983 is not an adaptation of a novel, but it shows that it could be. Right off the bat, I could list a dozen really amazing scenes and sections of that series that Hollywood executives would have just put the red marker to. It knows that it can get away with all of the great things that a novel can do, and it pulls that off so magnificently that I have never ever seen any other show be this good at it. It doesn't try to dumb itself down to appeal to a wider audience. Yes, the plot is complex, but it's not overly complicated. It's not spoon-fed to you like you're some kind of moron. You will have to use your brain to follow the show. However, especially in a thriller, it's so amazing to figure out the mystery a moment before the characters do. That's a complete adrenaline trip. And boy oh boy is this show full of mystery. Every scene answers some questions, but then gives you new ones. Mysteries will just turn up in corners where you would have never expected them to be. And in the end, it all ties up in a way that isn't neat. And that is what I love most about this show. This is a gritty series, it's a realistic series, and reality has a lot of unexpected twists and turns and leaves a lot of loose ends. In reality, things just don't always turn out as perfectly as you would want them to. Sometimes wheels just grind together in a way that makes the whole machine stutter. It's not some well-oiled, minimalistic plot that you would see in a Hollywood movie that you've already forgotten all about by the time the credits are done rolling. And that is what makes 1983 so much better, so much more immersive, so much more appealing than all of the other drivel out there. The showrunners really know what they are doing. Yes, they will use cool genre tropes, but they do not feel beholden to staying in that lane all the time. Yes, one of its storylines is a noir detective storyline, and it will have those tropes in there because those tropes are just fucking cool. But it will also not cling to them at all costs in order to always deliver what you expected. Everywhere it doesn't make sense to continue being this thing, it will either subvert or entirely avoid the tropes associated with it. It doesn't feel the need to tell the viewer what kind of story it is at all times. And it will change a little bit of what kind of story it is wherever it is actually appropriate. It is at all times a thriller, but it's so much more than that. There's so many layers to this show, and the confidence with which they are interwoven really shows. The atmosphere is perfection. Every single frame feels like a 2003 Polish communist dystopia, while at the same time still addressing modern topics and issues. The architecture, the wardrobe, the culture, the counterculture, the way that people speak. It is all done so well. There's so much in this show that is done with show don't tell that as an author it almost gives me an erection. The characters are so incredibly believable and they don't try their hardest to make them likable. They are flawed, problematic people, but you will care what happens to them. You will care about who they are the moment you lay eyes on them. And boy oh boy is the acting phenomenal. I've only watched the show in Polish with subtitles. I actually don't know how good the English dub is, but the original actors did everything right here. Even like minor characters are so well played that they steal the show at every turn. And this is something I love about 1983. They've been given this opportunity to bring Polish entertainment media to this massive international audience, to this huge global market, and they haven't fallen prey to the same trap that so many comparable projects in the past have fallen prey to. 1983 does not attempt to be an American show. It just attempts to be a good show. It doesn't sacrifice or go out of its way to fulfill expectations that people usually associate with the broad appeal of what is considered an American show. And that's a great development, because especially Americans are sick and tired of American shows. And this is what makes 1983 absolutely phenomenal. It is definitely one of the top 3 series that has come out this year. And I'm a little pissed off that it's not getting more international media attention. Its Wikipedia page doesn't even have a plot summary for each episode, only the first. Google seems only tangentially aware of its existence. Put it in YouTube, you will find trailers for the show, you will find some videos in Polish that presumably are about it, but mixed in there are just things that you would feel are unrelated, such as the song Blue Monday, which is one of my favorite songs, but the only reason it is in there is because it came out in 1983. And this, to be honest, is just sad, because of the immense quality that this already overlooked gem has to offer. So I highly recommend you get on Netflix right now and watch it. And if you like it, recommend it to your friends. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like it, share it, leave me your opinions about this show or just the concepts discussed in this video here in the comment section, obviously. Some of my patrons, though not many, have decided to abandon their Patreon accounts because Patreon apparently banned Sargon for some reason that I haven't looked into, but which is probably bogus because it always is. I was already a bit pissed when they did this to Lauren Southern, even though I do not like Lauren Southern, like at all. This is why I have made a Subscribestar account, and if you still want to continue on supporting me, you can do it there. I will not be cancelling my Patreon. Like many others, I do enjoy the consumption of food for nutritional purposes, and thus I will not cut out my largest and most stable source of income in the place where I am right now financially, which is living below the poverty line and always being at risk of falling off the wagon and being entirely left behind by money. But if you don't want to use Patreon anymore, I can fully respect that. This is why I've made that account, so you can still get all the benefits you would get from the Patreon account. In that spirit, go watch 1983. What are you still doing here, for fuck's sake? This is a good show. Stop watching this video. And see you around, cunts.